Now, in your book, you've shown many examples of the wonders of nature, the diversity of life. But in the end, if you follow through your belief, is it all pointless ultimately?
Well, it's ultimately pointless in the sense that there is no purpose that the universe has for us. I mean, we've come into the universe. But all the more reason to give ourselves a personal purpose, which we can do, and we all, of course, do. And I, and probably you, do have very strong guiding purposes in our lives. And that gives us great comfort, great solace, great cheer. And it doesn't matter that the universe has no ultimate purpose. Make your life purposeful while you've got it.
But science directly doesn't help us with that? Or?
Well,
except the pursuit of it, obviously.
The pursuit of it is clearly a very constructive, a very wonderful thing to do. I mean, to understand why you're here is a very beautiful thing, and it gives my life enormous meaning and purpose.
Just talking a second.
The first point. Without God, life is absurd. Brothers and sisters and friends, if we really think about it, can we have any true happiness without the divine reality and all the other associated ideas around God? Let me give you a few examples. Say every single one of you was sedated, and all of a sudden you wake up on Emirates, the Emirates flight, first class. You have a foot massage, a back massage, a face massage. You have the gourmet food. You have entertainment, HD. You have the best type of music, radio, cinema. You have food on tap, drink on tap, luxury on tap. Your seat is flatbed. Actually, it's just like sleeping on a fluffy cloud in paradise. You have an amazing window, the scenery, the Alps, sunset, sunrise. You are in bliss. Are you going to be happy? Think about this. Are we truly going to have a sense of ultimate happiness? Now, let me tell you what I would do. I would eat and I would drink. I'll enjoy the massage. But then after a few minutes, I'll think, I don't have my passport. I just woke up in this reality. Where did I come from? What am I supposed to do here? Where am I going? Just like the Quran says, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? And where are you going? Now you may think, excuse me, sir, this is cliche. I'm happy. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have children, buy a big house. I have food, I have shelter, I have clothing. I have the iPod, the iPad. I have the iPhone. I have technology, I have holidays. This type of happiness, brothers and sisters and friends, is what I would call the drunk man happiness. Because in reality, you're just drunk. You've suspended the critical questions and you're drunk by your senses. And sometimes you wake up with a hangover. And that equates to, my internet's not working. She left me. I lost my job. I've gained 2 stone. So from this perspective, I want you to be critical thinkers and understand the implications of these examples. Because in reality, how can we claim that we have ultimate happiness? And every human being has this form of self-love. And there's nothing wrong with loving yourself. Because I want to prolong my existence. I want to be happy. I want pleasure. But if we truly have self-respect, I would argue humbly that we have to answer those questions. and God and all the associated ideas around that concept really answer those questions. So without God, we can't truly be happy. Without God, brothers and sisters, there is no ultimate meaning. Now, many of you are studying to become doctors. I want to save humanity. I want to heal the sick. I want to take care of human beings. So what? What difference does it make if our lives just end in the grave? If we just become worm buffet, does it make any difference? I can claim to want to establish world peace. You can claim to want to find the cure for cancer. Someone else may claim they want to run the mafia. Who cares? Does it really make any difference ultimately if our lives just end in the grave? Now you may think, so what? We don't need any justification for meaning. We could make meaning on top of this nothingness. But for me, intuitively it doesn't make sense. It's like basically saying, let's pretend to have meaning. Let's pretend. It's like a theater. Brothers and sisters, I'm no actor. And nor are you. So I think life is ultimately absurd without the divine reality. This leads to the second point. God is a reality.
The absurdity of life in the absence of God. I want everyone to ask themselves a question. What does life mean in the absence of God? Does life hold any ultimate meaning or purpose? The reality is, when we ponder over this question, very soon we come to realize that life has no actual meaning. There is no absolute meaning or purpose to life. Because in the absence of God, all you are is an accident. An accidental byproduct of a lengthy evolutionary process. A cosmic orphan, nothing more than this. So what does this mean? This means that whether you live like a sinner or a saint, it does not really matter. Because your end is the same. 6 foot under, being eaten by worms, maggots, and whatever else there may be. So can you claim any ultimate purpose to life? Again, in the absence of God, there is no ultimate purpose. Accidents don't really have a purpose. You can ascribe purpose to yourself. You can tell yourself, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, an engineer, a scientist, a physicist, whatever it may be. But this is nothing short of deluding yourself. You're lying to yourself. You're just making things up, plucking things out of thin air. So in conclusion, I guess, in the absence of God, if you deny God, you deny your very existence, your very self. In the absence of God, all you are is an accident waiting to die. Now, as morbid as that sounds, that's the reality. If you choose to accept that worldview. But the reality is, the actual reality is, God does exist and He created us with a purpose. And Allah, God, probes this thinking, this questioning in the Quran when He says, oh, do you think we have created you without purpose, in play, and that you will not be brought back to us? The reality, brothers, sisters and friends, is that we were created and we will be taken back to God. Now, exactly why He created us, with what purpose, can be found in the Quran itself. And I'm not going to give you that, because I want you to go on way and make that decision, make that choice, whether you want to find that purpose, discover it or not.
Hamza finished his talk by knocking on the door, and that's where I'm going to begin my talk. I'm going to go back to that knocking on the door, and I'm going to ask you a question. Without opening that door over there, can anyone tell me what's behind that door? The one over there. Huh? Unless you know the do you work here in the university? Yeah, exit and ventilation. Are you sure though? It's a guess, right? But you don't really know. There could be a big green hairy monster there, perhaps. Well, maybe not, you know. But actually, all I'm really trying to do is, although our intellect is hugely important, and both me and Hamza would argue vigorously that in order to understand God, in order to understand religion, we have to use our intellect. and there may be other ways, but we would probably both of us argue that the intellect is one of the most important tools that we have. But your intellect has a limit. And I was demonstrating there the limit of your intellect. When it comes to something that is unseen, when it comes to the unseen, all you can do in reality is guess. You could take an educated guess. But I want to up the ante a bit here. And I want to propose to you something that I'd like you to think about. Imagine that you really need to know what is behind that door. In fact, let me suggest to you as a thought experiment for this evening that knowing what is behind that door is absolutely essential to your survival. Knowing what is behind that door is essential to your survival, and you have a limited amount of time in order to decide what is behind that door. You can't open the door. You're not allowed to open the door, but you have to come to a decision. If your decision is not right, it is going to affect your life in a most horrific way that you possibly can't even truly comprehend. That's my thought experiment. And imagine there are 5 or 6 people, or maybe more, competing for your attention, trying to persuade you that they can actually tell you what is behind that door. One of them may even be trying to persuade you that there is nothing behind the door. There is no door. The door is an illusion. There may be someone trying to convince you of that. There may be different people who are trying to convince you what is behind the door for various different reasons. But amongst those people, there is one who is going to be able to tell you the truth. I'm actually really trying to give you an example, as probably you might be aware, of different religions in the world. Often people present this argument. Okay, it makes sense that there's a God. It's logical, it's rational. The most rational proposition, and I would just really sum up my opinion about Hamza's quite detailed and philosophical discussion, is that the most rational conclusion of the rational mind is that this universe has an intelligent, powerful creator, and that there rationally could only be one intelligent, powerful creator who is transcendent, who is different from this universe. So the creator of the universe is different from the universe. But that's pretty much the limit of what we can understand through reason. And I would say that actually, by the way, it is one of the, or perhaps even the most powerful argument for the truthfulness of the Quranic narrative. That the concept of God that is taught by the Quran is exactly this concept. That this universe has been created by a powerful and intelligent being who is transcendent. By that I mean that God is not like anything in the universe. And the Quranic concept of God does not compromise that in any way by, for example, claiming that some creature, such as a human being, shares the power, the knowledge, or the attributes of God. And that would be a self-contradictory statement. If you think about it, if you're claiming that a created being has any of the power of the knowledge of the ability of God, then the whole basis upon which you build an argument for the existence of God in the first place, it falls down. It demolishes itself. So that's what I would propose, first of all, is one of the most powerful arguments, one of the most persuasive arguments that a person should believe what the Muslims are saying. Because the similitude or the example I'm giving of the door is really the example of the afterlife. It's the example of the afterlife. It's also the example of knowing God. How can we know God? Through what means can we know God? Is there a means to know God? All of these questions and more, the ones that Hamza also introduced. The purpose of life. Why are we here? What is it all for? What is the reason for our existence? These are, of course, all the questions that religions in various different ways try to answer.
I mean, there are all sorts of ways that one might come face to face with this question of, is there a God? But a particularly interesting one is sitting at the bedside of someone who is facing death and imagining yourself in that position. And I couldn't help but think, I don't want to be in that position and not have some better sense of the answer. You know, when you're young, you can imagine for the longest time that you're immortal. But when you're a medical student facing death every day on the wards, it's pretty hard. And that's really what happened to me that afternoon. A combination of realizing I hadn't done the hard work that I should to answer a really important question, and a realization that my life was not going to go on forever. And Billy Graham once, talking to somebody about faith, had the response coming back from that young person, well, you know, I've got a long time to live. I'm the sort of person who doesn't study during the course. I wait and then I cram for exams. To which Billy Graham responded, gee, I hope you don't get a pop quiz. Thinking about that, there in my 26th year, sitting at the bedside of this wonderful, kindly, spiritual woman, without realizing it in quite those terms, I think the pop quiz possibility may have crossed my consciousness, and I realized this is not something to put off. This is one of those questions that sooner or later you're going to have to address, and to pretend you've addressed it already is clearly not defensible. You've never given any serious consideration to the possibility that faith might be real.
The last point, the common point held by those who have accepted God and said, okay, everything seems to indicate that there must be a God. Scientists, astronomers, physicists, etc. Many of them believe in God. A huge portion of them believe in God. The fields where you find most of them not believing in God are the pseudosciences. Psychiatry, psychology, these other fields which depend mostly on human theories. That's the foundation. There is facts and figures and data, etc., but the core of it is human reasoning, human ideas. So in those fields you find a large portion of those people don't believe in God. But the natural scientists who study the planets, study the earth, study the plants, the animals, you find them, the vast majority of them, believing in God. However, raised, for example, in Christian tradition or other traditions, when looking at religion and how it seems to be fabricated, changing, different religions, who's right, who's wrong. So they say, okay, the only simple solution for all of this is to say, God created this world and human beings created religions. Religions are all human-made. Human beings made them up. That's the easy way out. Rather than saying, there's also the possibility that one of them is right and the rest are wrong. They're only looking at the possibility that they're all wrong, because they all differ, they all claim they're right, so therefore, all wrong. But there's the other possibility that one could be right and the rest wrong. So, why is that illogical? Why does that indicate that one hasn't understood one's Lord? Because common sense, again, reason and logic tells us that a person who sets up a company and hires people to work in the company and didn't explain to them what they're supposed to do in the company When the workday starts, they come to the company. When the workday ends, they leave the company. In between, what are they doing? Nobody told them what to do. So they just came, they hung out in the cafeteria, chatted, walked around the plant, looking at things, touching things. They didn't work there. Common sense tells us that the owner of such a plant who did that is foolish. He's not very smart, not very wise. For him to have set up this plant, brought people in, and didn't tell them what they're supposed to do. Chaos is going to be the result. You're not going to succeed. The company will not progress. What you intended will not be done. That's common sense. So when we say God created the world and left it to run on its own, that is attributing to God a lack of wisdom on a huge scale. For were he not to have informed human beings about the reason why they are here, their purpose, what are they supposed to do during their lifetime, for him to have done that would have been like that man and his company. Unwise. But we know one of the basic characteristics of God is that he is all-wise. Not unwise, all-wise. So therefore, we have to accept logically. Once we accept the logic of God's existence, that he conveyed his wish, his will to human beings in the form of books of revelation and in the form of prophets who would explain to people how to apply those books of revelation. That is reason and logic. That is understanding who is our Lord. So, for us to be able to successfully respond to the questions at the end of this life, Man Rabbuk, who is your Lord? We need to be clear. And that is what the Quran is all about. The essence of the message of the Quran is conveying to human beings who is their Lord, so that they would understand that worship belongs to him alone, that he is the only one who deserves to be worshipped, without any intermediaries between himself and his creatures. That all of the various forms of intermediacy, they're all false. They're not from God. God did not teach this. God taught that we worship him alone. Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call on me. God says in the Quran, Allah says, call on me and I will answer your prayers. So no matter how much people might logically try to explain the need for intercessors, how do they explain it? Commonly they will say, listen, you dirty with sins. You're not a perfect human being. You've committed many sins. So you're dirty with sins. And you want to approach God who is pure. Then you need to find somebody who is closer to him due to his or her purity, and then you pray through them. You call on them in prayer, and because they're closer to God, they will get your prayers up to God. Just like in this world, what happens? You want to see the Prime Minister, you can't just go down to the home of the Prime Minister and knock on his door and say, Mr. Prime Minister, I'd like to have a little chat with you. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to see your local representative who then speaks to somebody else, and this one speaks to that one, up the ladder, till finally it gets to the Prime Minister. Just the same way. Sounds logical. But that is not understanding God. That is logic of this world, of this life. That's how we do things. But God has made it clear that he hears all. He knows all. So we don't need intermediaries between ourselves and God. To add intermediaries, to use intermediaries, whether we call them saints, and we have Muslims who believe in saints, as Catholics do, or we call them imams, and there are Muslims who believe that there are individuals, 12 in number, who have the attributes of Allah. And they are intermediaries to whom you may pray, call on, seek guidance. They will do things for you in this life because you call on them. Any of such beliefs are false. They are a result of not knowing our Lord. As I said in the very beginning, the question, is belief enough? No, it's not. It's not enough if we haven't understood Man Rabbuk, who is your Lord. If we have understood who our Lord is, then yes, belief linked with righteous deeds is enough. Belief which is actualized, which is implemented in our lives, that is enough to give us success in this world. So I ask Allah Most High and Almighty to guide us to the understanding of who He is, so that we may worship Him as He deserves to be worshipped, wherein we dedicate our whole lives to His worship, understanding that worship is not just putting up your hands at a certain time in the day or in a certain place, call a mosque or a church or whatever, synagogue, etc. No, that worship involves obeying God in all aspects of our lives. As God said in the Quran, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Say, indeed, my prayers, my sacrifices, my living and my dying are for Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. May Allah give us that reality and make Him in our hearts our true Lord. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السؤال اللي بعد كده اللي بيجي دايما باستمرار طرحنا عليه، ربنا خلقنا اصلا. ربنا سبحانه وتعالى قال لنا في القرآن الكريم إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. يبقى أنا ربنا جعلني خليفة في هذه الأرض، أنا اللي أقيم العدل، أنا اللي أنصر الحق، أنا اللي أعبد ربنا، وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. فأنا هنا لسبب في هذه الأرض. أنا من مهام الخليفة إنه يعبد ربنا ويعبد الناس لله اختياريا، يعني ينشر كلمة الحق، يدعو الناس إلى عبادة الله، ويعمر الأرض. هو خلقكم من الأرض واستعمركم فيها. يبقى ربنا خلقنا في هذه الأرض عشان نعمرها، عشان نعبد ربنا، عشان نعبد الناس لله باختيارهم، وعشان نقيم العدل ونحمي الحق في هذه الأرض. وللحديث بقية.
And so I'll try to sort of take you through what my experience was as quickly as I can. So I came to the 30th verse of the second surah, Surah Al-Baqarah, and it began like this. It said, "Behold, your Lord said to the angels, I am going to place a vicegerent on earth." The Arabic word is khalifa. It means a representative or an emissary of mine. "I am going to place a vicegerent on earth." And they said, the angels said, "Will you place therein one who will spread corruption and shed blood, while we celebrate your praises and glorify your holiness?" And God said, He said, "Truly I know what you do not know." See, that's the verse that hooked me. That's the verse that caught my attention. That's the one that kept on making me read the story again and again and again. Because listen to the way it begins. "Behold, your Lord said to the angels, I am going to place a representative of mine on earth, a vicegerent of mine, an emissary, one who acts on my behalf." I thought, that's not the way it goes. You're not supposed to be placing man on the earth in some positive role, some elective office. He placed man on earth as a punishment for his sin. Clearly, I knew the author didn't quite get the point. But still, it was an amazing line. But then I come to the next line, and it says, and the angels say, will you place her in one who will spread corruption and shed blood, while we celebrate your praises and glorify you? I looked at it again. I couldn't believe the question. They said, will you place her in one who will spread corruption and shed blood, while we, the angels, celebrate your praises and glorify you? I looked at that and I said, exactly. That would be my question. Why would you create this being, supposedly for some positive role, when he's capable of doing tremendous wrongdoing? When he could spread corruption and shed much blood? Why would you create this violent and pernicious creature when you could create angels? As the angels clearly say, well, we, the angels, celebrate your praises and glorify you. They were asking one of the most fundamental questions in the entire history of religion. Why create you, man, this utterly fallible creature, this creature who could rebel against God's will, who could do such tremendous wrongdoing, who could wreak havoc like no other creature on earth, when you can make them angels? And look where the question is being asked. It's being asked in heaven. It's almost like saying, look, why don't you just make them angels and be up here in heaven with us, you know? Why don't you just make them angels, pop them into heaven, he's fine. Why would you put him on earth where he can feel distant from you, where he can work out his worst criminal tendencies, act them out, feeling somehow independent and apart from you and free to do whatever he wants, when you could just make them angels and put them into heaven and make them perfectly submissive to your will? I looked at that question and said, that's my question. I'm not even a single verse into the story of mankind, and there before me I see my question. That whole question, everything that I ever thought, everything that I ever experienced, everything that I ever knew was in that question. It was as if the author took my life and wanted to pick out exactly the right question to humiliate me, to provoke me, to anger me. Why create man, this most destructive and violent creature, when you could make them angels? And then look at the answer. And he said, God said, truly I know what you do not know. You know, in modern parlance, we would say, I know exactly what I'm doing. I read that and said, what? You know what you do not know? You know exactly what you're doing? Well, please inform me. Tell me what you're doing. Because, you know, I'm 28 years old and I haven't figured out it yet. And I have a lot of issues that I'm still dealing with that's connected to this question. You can't just get off that easy. You can't just tell me you know exactly what you're doing. Not after what I've been through. Not after you made me this way. And then I realized, of course, I was arguing with a God I didn't even believe in. And that would happen several times as I read through the Quran. And sometimes I would just get into so agitated by what I read, I'd start arguing with this voice that I'm reading before me, that's calling to me.
Let's move on. Why are we here? If we agree that as we are creation, there is a creator, we have to ask the question, why? For what purpose were we created? I ask everybody to look around, not just now, but for the rest of the night. Look around. Everything that you see that we have ever made with the hands of man, we have made for a purpose. What is that purpose? Why have we ever made anything? Anything small or anything big? As far as I'm concerned, and I've never found anybody to say otherwise, we have never created, we have never made anything except to perform a function for us. In other words, we have never made anything except to serve us. Does it not make sense then that our Creator made us to serve Him? In fact, this is what Allah tells us in the Holy Quran when He revealed in the translation of the meaning of the Quran, Surah 51, Ayat 56, quote, "And I, God, have not created jinn and men except that they should serve, and some translate worship, me, meaning Almighty God Allah. So that is the purpose of our creation. That is reason for our existence. We were not created in the same way that we do not make anything except for it to serve us by performing a function. In the same way, we were not created except for a purpose. And that purpose is to serve the Creator, to serve and worship the Creator. So how? How do we serve Him? Think about this. Our Creator gave everything a guidance system. We have light to find our way during the day. We have the stars and the moon to find our way at night. This is for seeing animals. Birds migrate by polarized light. That is how they are able to migrate even when there are clouds covering the sky. They can read the polarization of the light even though they cannot see the sun. Other animals migrate by reading the magnetic field of the earth. Whales, lobsters can actually sense the magnetism of the earth and follow it, and that is how they find their way. That was the gift of our Creator to them. Salmon, this delicious fish that we have, leave the place of their birth, go down the river, out into the ocean for years. For years. When they come back to the river they were born in. They fight their way back up to the river to the very spot where they hatched from an egg, and they find their way there by smell. They smell their way from the vastness of the ocean to the river they were born with, back to the exact spot they were born. Bats and river dolphins have sonar. Marine animals in the deep ocean, so deep that there is no light, they can read electrical currents, so they can know where they are. They can find their prey by the electrical currents generated thereby. Insects have pheromones, which are chemicals so sensitive that they can sense a single molecule, and find their ways to food, find their ways to a mate. Plants, our Creator gave plants a unique guidance. Phototrophism, by which the stalk grows up. Geotrophism, by which the roots go down, and the two never get confused. You never find the roots growing up and the plant growing down. What is my point? My point is that our Creator has given everything in His creation guidance by which it can find its way to the things that it needs, food, a mate, etc. Can we possibly believe for 1 minute that our Creator would have so much mercy that He would give us guidance in all things, give guidance to all of His creation in all things, but He would not give us guidance to the hereafter? Is it possible to believe that? What would be the guidance to the hereafter? Obviously, revelation. Think of us. Think of our lives this way. A minute ago, I was talking about everything that we as man have made with our own hands. I drew the parallel that as we are creation of our Creator, we were created for a purpose. Now, when we make something with rules. It doesn't matter how simple or complex it is. If you have a spoon to eat with, that spoon has rules. You use it right side up, not upside down. You use the bowl of the spoon to eat with. You don't use the handle of the spoon to eat with. Now, this may seem simplistic, and you might say, well, I knew that. That's obvious. It wasn't always. When you were a baby, when you picked up that spoon, you might have picked it up by any end, and it might not have gone to your mouth. You could have put it into your eye if you wanted to, and as a baby, you wouldn't have known that that was not its purpose. But with the simple things, we grow to understand the rules. With the complex things, we don't. And so, the manufacturer gives us a user's manual. We buy a television, we buy a car, we buy a computer. What does it come with? An instruction manual. The instruction manual, by the way, is written by who? When we buy a product, do we ever find that Sony is writing the instructions for Panasonic television? Do we ever find that Ford Motor Company is writing the instruction manual for Hyundai cars? No. The instruction manual is always written by the one who made the product. That is the one who knows it best. So it only makes sense that the instruction manual for us would be written by the one who made us, the one who knows us best. To draw the parallel out a little bit longer, think of any instruction manual you ever read. It starts with what? Warnings. Warning, warning, warning. What will happen if you use this product incorrectly? Then it tells you how to use it correctly and the benefit that you will gain by doing so. And it finishes with what? A troubleshooting guide. How is that different from Revelation? Revelation tells us what not to do and the consequences of that. It tells us what to do and the benefit to be gained thereby. And it gives us a troubleshooting guide. In other words, it tells us how to sort ourselves out if we have a problem, how to correct our deficiencies and guide ourselves aright. Now, if you meet the specifications of what your duties are, you will reap the reward. And if you are an employee who is substandard, what happens to you? You get fired. Think about that word. Fired. The consequence of underperforming. The consequence of not meeting standards. That word did not come from nowhere. In the past, the people who were developing the English language looked around and said, how should we describe somebody who is a failure? What happens to them? In the same way that a person who is a failure in life finds the fire in the hereafter, the employee who is a failure on his job gets fired. So let us not be failures in life, and let us not be failures in the hereafter. So, hopefully by this point, we have agreed that as we are creation, there is a creator. That as everything we make for the purpose of serving us, our creator made us to serve and worship him. We are then talking about how. The owner's manual, the manual of specification for us is the manual of revelation. Why? What is the need for revelation? Isn't it enough for all of us just to be good? Now, all of you know I am not dreaming up these questions by myself. All of you have heard other people asking these questions. Yeah, sure, I believe there's a God. Yeah, okay, I know I believe there's a God, and I know I should be serving and worshiping him, but it's enough just to be good. I'm a good person, that's enough. So isn't that enough? The answer is no, it's not enough. Why? Well, to begin with, we have to examine the reason for revelation. Our Creator is fair and just. Our Creator is fair and just. When we die, we are going to the day of judgment, where we are going to be evaluated and assigned either to punishment or to paradise. Would it be fair for that assignment to be arbitrary? We are going to stand in front of a court. Think about a court for a minute. To establish justice, you need four things. You need a judge, you need a court, you need witnesses, and you need a book of laws. If you do not have any of those four things, how can you establish justice? And on the day of judgment, the judge will be Allah, the book of laws will be the Holy Quran, and the witnesses will be the elements of creation, and the court will be the day of judgment. Now, It is by those four things that we will...
I want you to imagine you wake up and in front of you are a bunch of guys running around kicking a ball. No goals, no lines, no rules. What would you think? But is that your life? Surely every sport has its goal. Every game has its end. It has its objective. It has its rules. How about life? How about our life? Isn't there a goal to life? Isn't there a purpose, an objective that we have to reach? We think so. The Quran tells us that we exist in order to worship God, and worshipping God means knowing God, as the Quran says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Worship, though, is not some narrow, small thing. It's wide, it's vast, it encompasses everything that the human being does. Everything that you do, everything that you think, everything that you feel can be done, thought, said, felt in a way that is either pleasing or displeasing to God. The purpose of life is to try and do everything in a way that God loves and God is pleased with. That is your goal.
I have a really interesting approach to a very popular question. People ask you the question, there's thousands of religions, why would I pick Islam out of that? And I have an answer for that. When people say that there's thousands of religions, what you do is, for them, you break the thousands of religions down into categories. Category 1, pantheism, which believes that everything is God and God is everywhere. This doesn't make sense because if I make this table, do I become the table? No, I don't. So that's completely invalid. But there's pantheism. The second category is polytheism, and then there's monotheism. Polytheism, we know there can't be many gods. For example, like Hinduism, we know that can't be true because if there was more than one gods, they would argue with each other on how they want the world to happen and where they want the sun to come out from and how they would create the world. And it says in the Quran, and if there were more than one god, there would be destruction. And this is why when you watch Greek mythology in movies, you always see these gods fighting against each other. So that was the second category, polytheism. And the third one is monotheism. This leaves us with three religions. Number 1, Judaism. Number 2, Christianity. And number 3, Islam. Judaism, we can't really say that we can follow that as a religion because you need to be born into it. You can't convert into a Jew. So that's out of the question. Number 2, Christianity. It has a Trinity which creates a lot of problems, and that even renders it out monotheism in the first place. I mean, how can Jesus be God, eternal, the Father, and then be the Son, and then the Son prays to the Father and says, it's me, you, and we're the same thing? It doesn't make sense. So we're left with Islam. With Islam, you explain to the person what we believe about Allah, His Messenger, one powerful creator who created the universe, who is nothing like His creation, who is timeless, who is all-powerful, intelligent, and you can prove this and you can learn this from the other videos. So this is just a quick thing I wanted to share for a very, very popular question that a lot of us get asked. So you break it down into categories, go through the categories, and you end up with Islam. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
If you want money, we'll collect enough money for you so that you'll be the richest one of us. If you want leadership, we'll take you as our leader and never decide on any matter without your approval. Or, if you want the kingdom, we'll crown you king over us. If you want a wife, we would lead you to the most beautiful woman. What would you answer if all this was offered to you? But the Prophet Muhammad refused all this. If he wanted money, women, or power by the call to Islam, why hadn't he accepted these tempting offers while he was at the beginning of the call? He would have garnered all this without any risk or difficulty. Why did he insist on the call to Allah and delivering the message of Islam to all servants of Almighty Allah? Then, Islam is a divine message that's worth exerting the efforts and bearing hardship.
At the time of Prophet Muhammad, a solar eclipse occurred. People quickly attributed its occurrence to the death of Abraham, the son of the prophet. Usually, the ancients ascribed the sun to gods. They used to believe that the sun eclipses when a great figure dies, but the eclipse is a sign of defeat in battles, death of a king, or the fall of his reign. Had Allah's messenger been a seeker of fame, money, and authority, and had he liked the idea of being praised and having his son's death attributed to the solar eclipse, he would have remained silent about it, leaving the people to sanctify him and give him a higher status. But Allah's messenger did not approve their mistake, and he corrected their wrong beliefs. He said, "The sun and the moon are two of Allah's signs. They do not eclipse for the death or living of anyone. When that happens, pray and make supplication until it clears." Hence, all this asserts that Muhammad is Allah's messenger. He wanted Muslims to build their faith on a solid ground.
What are we doing here? And where are we gonna go? It's like we just woke up one morning and then it's welcome to the show. Don't ask any questions, just go with the flow. Make as much money as you can and try your best not to get broke. Copy everything you see on the TV, from the hairstyles to the clothes, and don't think too often, just do exactly as you're told. And if you ever get confused, then just turn towards the alcohol. You'll still hear your thoughts, then just turn up the radio as you learn to live a lifestyle of drugs, sex, and rock and roll. But in all honesty, I just need to know, is there more to the cycle than growing and getting old? Living and dying just to leave behind a happy home and a whole lot of property that somebody else is going to own. I just really need to know before the casket's closed, 'cause I'm not willing to gamble with my soul, nor am I ready to take any chances. These are just simple life questions and I'm just searching for some answers. Like, what are we doing here? And what is our purpose? How did we get here, and who made us so perfect? And what happens once we go, or is this world all really worth it? Questions we don't answer because apparently we don't really have to. There's no purpose to this life and our existence is merely natural. Then in that case, please let me ask you, did you create yourself, or was it somebody else who had fashioned you? 'Cause you're a being that's impeccable, faultless and unparalleled. You're a product of supreme intelligence and I'm merely being rational. For there isn't a camera on this earth that can come close to the human eye, nor a computer that can compete alongside the human mind. And if the whole world was to come together, we wouldn't be able to create a single fly. So many signs, yet we still deny. As science tries to justify that all this could come from none, when it's a simple sum. 0 plus 0 plus 0 cannot possibly ever give you 1. So from where did all this order come? But everything has its origins, a maker, a creator of its own. I mean, the only reason you're watching this video is because somebody had to press upload. So we can believe in the Big Bang, but I'd rather believe in He who caused it to explode. Allah, the creator of everything along with every single soul. The ever-living, the master, the only one who is in control. Unlike his creation, beyond our imagination. And no, he's not a man, nor does he have any partners in association. He's on his own. And no, he did not ever leave us alone. Just like every manufacturer, he left us with an instruction manual. The Quran and Islam, and I'm sorry to jump to conclusions, but it's the only one possible. The only definition of God is the one and only supreme being. It's logical. A book with zero contradictions, with miracles that are both scientific and historical, all revealed over 1400 years ago. Like the detailed description of the human embryo.
The descriptions of the human embryo in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century.
To the mountains as pegs holding firm the earth below, and the two seas that don't mix in a complete separate flow. To the planets in orbit, alternating night and day as they stay in flow. The expansion of the universe and the creation of everything from H2O. To the stories of the past and the preservation of Pharaoh. To identifying the lowest point in the land where Persia defeated Rome. The gushing fluid that created man in the glands between the ribs and the backbone. And not a word has changed, it's still the same. So please explain how all this was known over 1400 years ago. To a man who couldn't read or write as he would recite whatever the angels spoke. And if you still don't believe, please try to come up with something that's even close. But you can't, so we took God as a mockery and his messengers as a joke.
Muhammad could not read or write. How somebody who can't read or write gonna start a religion?
Dismissed his scriptures as legends and tales of the ancient folk, as we live life according to our whims, desires, and hopes. Saying this life is the only home we will ever know. We will live then die, then simply turn to bones. YOLO! Correction, after the grass dies, the rain arrives and it regrows, and Allah promises to do the same thing to your very soul and bring you back from your very fingertips to your toes. As the all-seeing supreme being watches us so close, and we are surely being tested in our wealth, our health, and our self, and everything that we've been blessed with. So believe, for we will surely be resurrected and be brought back to our Lord and account for every single deed, as he hands us our books and orders us to read. From the bad to the good and everything in between. You yourself are sufficient for your own accountability, so don't be mad at me. You are the one who thought he wouldn't come back to me. I gave you a whole life long to search after me, but you were busy in all that which was temporary. So read, and glad tidings to all those who believed. And if you disbelieve, read. And don't let that day be the first day you find out what your life really means. Read.
أَمَّنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَأَنزَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فأنبتنا به حدائق ذات بهجة ما كان لكم أن تنبتوا شجرها أإله مع الله بل هم قوم يعدلون. أمن جعل الأرض قرارا وجعل خلالها أنهارا وجعل لها رواسي وجعل بين البحرين حاجزا أإله مع الله بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون. أمن جعل الأرض قرارا وجعل خلالها أنهارا وجعل خلالها وجعل لها رواسي وجعل بين البحرين حاجزا أإله مع الله بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون أمن يهديكم في ظلمات البر والبحر ومن يرسل الرياح بشرا بين يدي رحمته أإله مع الله أإله مع الله تعالى الله تعالى الله تعالى الله عما يشركون أمن يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده ومن يرزقكم من السماء والأرض أإله مع الله قل هاتوا برهانكم إن كنتم صادقين